This is Robert with Pioneer Smokehouses, and today we're going to do another test cook on the Masterbuilt charcoal bullet smoker. And the first thing I want to mention is that in my last cook I had a real hard time with temperature control. Basically, the bottom is not sealed, it just has a bowl that sits in there, and so air can freely move around the outside of that bowl. While I can control the top vent, that doesn't help much. As much air as the fire wants to consume, it will draw. Now, my solution for this is to switch to a different type of burning. So rather than do a full minion method where we fill the whole bowl and then burn across it, that will spread out with the amount of air that we have available. I'm going to do a snake method and run around in a circle. I'm going to show you a few things, and I'm going to use my tongs as pointers. Now, if you see down in here, you can see that there's two rocks here. These rocks are actually my starting point for my charcoal snake. I need a little divider here to separate the beginning from the end. So this is the beginning, and this is the ending. This small piece of wood is a lighter piece, and then it runs around in this direction until it comes to the end. When we get to the end, we could actually add more charcoal and continue the snake around a little bit. While it would be a little bit difficult, it's not the end of the world. So I will rotate this slightly, and I'm going to show you that. So if we need to add charcoal, we can easily access here and add it around a little bit. Now that really depends on the cooking time and how it's performing. Also, we can reach in there and add a couple pieces of charcoal on the top, and if it's not getting hot enough, I'll probably add small pieces of lump charcoal, because the small pieces of lump charcoal will actually burn hotter than the charcoal briquettes. If you notice here, I added some lumps of wood throughout the bowl here. The lumps of wood need to be separated by 2 or more briquettes, and the reason is because they will light and create a wick effect. If you touch them or get them too close, like this for instance, what will happen is the fire will jump across this gap and light this before this gets going well. It'll continue around onto the next wood chunk, and we don't want that. We want it to go around smoothly at the speed of the charcoal, not at the speed of the wood, because this will burn considerably faster. Now I'm going to show you a picture that I took earlier, and that picture is a picture of different sizes of wood chunks. When we select wood chunks, we want to select them no larger than 2 pieces of briquette. Now if you put in larger pieces than that, they will take a bunch more area, and they'll also burn a lot faster and increase your temperature a lot. And again, we don't want that. We want as stable as a cook as possible. If you're really just getting started and you're not sure, skip the wood chunks altogether and maybe add a few wood chips in every other briquette, just to add a little bit of smoky flavor and to prevent having huge temperature spikes. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to prep a charcoal chimney and just do the minimum amount, because we only need about 4 hot charcoals to get this method going. We also could just use matchlight briquettes to get this going, and that is a good thing if you have plenty of time. I like to go ahead and use a few of the regular briquettes in the charcoal chimney and hand load them with the tongs. I went ahead and lit the charcoal chimney with just 1 matchlight charcoal and 5 briquettes on the side burner of my propane grill. Now that works pretty well, and it is relatively safe as long as it's not in a location that can catch fire or anything. The reason that I like to do that is because it's so easy and just flows right up into it. The one downside of using such a small amount of charcoal is that it's actually harder to light 5 or 6 pieces of charcoal than it is to light 12 or 18 pieces of charcoal. They get all packed in there and they all start going, and the fire works its way through there, and it really helps them take off. So this will take as much time, if not more, to light properly. We are just barely good to go here, and I'm going to go ahead and feed these charcoals in. It's really important that I put them right on top of that starter block, because that starter block will ignite. And I will take the ones that have the nicest ash on them and put them in there first. The ash on the outside is a good sign that they're good and going. And if you're not sure, then just hold off a little bit longer and give them more time to go. So something else to point out is that you don't want these falling back towards your end of the charcoal snake. So you need to make sure that if they're going to fall, they're going to fall on the other charcoal. Another thing that you can do is just put more rocks in there to make sure that they don't come back this direction. Now, you can leave it open like this and let it get going. But what I like to do is I like to close up most of it. So I'll put in the drip pan and all the grill grates and then give it a little air. Now, typically I use an old blow dryer for that, but you can use anything. You can even blow on it if you want. Once the little block of wood catches on fire, that's like a wick, and it's going to get those things burning and get the process started really good. We do need this to get preheated, so I'll go ahead and put in those parts real quick, and then we'll get the pork ready. When I do pork or pork shoulder, I always start by putting a little bit of granulated garlic on it, and then a little bit of coarse black pepper. Next, I'll add my seasoning. Now today, seasoning was a basic brisket rub, and I'll tell you that I don't have a favorite pork seasoning, while I have a favorite beef seasoning, which is Cosmos cow cover. The pork, I just don't have a solid favorite. So I've kind of still looking, and I think that a lot of the beef seasoning rub is really good with pork, especially if you add a little hit of garlic. And then of course, most of the commercial rubs never have enough pepper for me, so I always add a little bit of that too. I went ahead and let this preheat, and it is warming up. I dropped in another thermometer in the top to get a gauge between the original thermometer and then this thermometer. And my experience has been so far that this thermometer is a good 20% or more under the actual temperature. So we're going to do two things today. First, we're going to go ahead and we're going to use the temp spike. And I loaded that on my old phone, which will require a battery because the battery's dead. Any Android, and I'm assuming any iOS device, will also load this app without an issue, and as long as it's relatively current with the operating system. I was able to just go right on the Play Store, load the app, and then I told it to find the device. I turned the device on, it popped right up. So no problem. All I'm going to have to do is plug it into a battery to keep it running, because this battery will last about an hour, and that'll be the end of it. I'm going to go ahead and take this cover off, and the top gauge is showing 210, and we're going to need to be in a little bit closer to the 250 range. When I trimmed the pork, I took this slide cut off, and it's almost like a piece of pork belly, and I just cut it kind of thin and, you know, made sure that I got into the meat just a little bit, and then I just seasoned it with what was left on the cutting board and a touch more pepper to give it a little spice to it. I'm going to go ahead and set this on. My goal is to get this as close to the center as possible, but I want to move it just a little bit over here because we want the temp spike to be in here. When I use a temp spike, there's a little line that has to go into the meat, so that line needs to either be completely touching or just slightly inside. So I will take that and use my thumb as a guide to get it in there. Normally I would do this with gloves, but I'm not doing it right this time. And then I just double check to make sure that line is completely gone. And now I'm going to move this over a little bit more because I don't want that right up against the side of the smoker. Now you can see that I got it in there and it's close to the center. I actually went just slightly lower than I wanted to. But today I'm more worried about watching the ambient temperature of the smoker than I am inside the pork. I can always use an instant read thermometer, and that lightning instant read thermometer is super fast. So I can open it, take the temperature, and be done. I'm going to go ahead and get this back on there because I want the heat to keep going up. And we're going to go ahead and take a look inside. Something that I don't know if I mentioned or not is to make sure that you use well-tempered rocks. If they haven't been through the heating and cooling process completely, there's a chance that they will explode. And it sounded like earlier, like one of the rocks had cracked in half, basically exploding because of an air pocket inside. When you temper them, put them in a fire with the charcoal right in the middle and keep the door and lid closed all the time, and let them go through the whole process, and then the next day dig them out with your tongs or whatever before you dump out your ashes. And then you'll know if they're safe to use. If you're not sure, go straight with either some ceramic briquettes, the kind that you can buy online, and I'll try to find a link for that below, or you could use lava rock. Most lava rock is going to be completely safe for this, but also temper that too, just in case there's an air pocket inside that you missed. I'm going to go ahead and put the door back on. I have not done any modifications to this door yet, but so far what I've noticed is when you push it up there, lift up on the handle a little bit so you get a nice angle and it'll just lock in place. I bent it just a little bit in there, but again, I'm not worried about a perfectly sealed smoker. At this point in this cook, I'm just worried about making sure that we get the charcoal snake going well and keeping a steady temperature. We're going to keep an eye on this and see what happens. And again, if I need a little more temperature, I'll add some lump charcoal to the top of the snake. The final step that I'm going to do before I let this thing sit for a while is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my ThermoPro app for the temp spike, and I'm going to take this phone and plug it in. Now the phone shows that the battery is charging, and we'll be able to track this constantly. I'm going to go ahead and turn the alarm off, and I'm going to select a profile. This one will be pork, and the well done setting for the pork on this one is 170, but I'm going to edit that. I'm going to change that to 195. Now technically I would like to pull it around 193, but it does depend on the consistency of the pork. Once the pork is starting to get probe tender and not completely probe tender, I like to pull it and wrap it and rest it. And the reason is I don't want my meat to fall apart. I want it soft and moist, but I also want it to hold together. We're not going for a pulled. We are going for a brisket consistency sliced pork. We're going to go ahead and let that run, and I will see you back here in a couple of seconds, but most likely it'll be about 2 or 3 hours for me. It has been about 3 hours, and I want to see if you can hear something. I'm going to take my microphone and put it down here. So if you can hear that, that is basically the sizzling of the fat from the pork shoulder landing into the drip tray. And normally I have those wrapped with foil or some kind of covering to keep that out of there, and it usually just kind of holds heat. But that is a really cool sound, and so I thought I would share it with you. Now, as far as the app goes, see if I can show this to you because I don't have full connectivity. So down at the bottom here is the ambient temperature of 275, and the internal temperature of the pork is 162. And I'm just trying to make sure you can get a good shot of that. Now, this thing is working great. It does say that there's only 25 minutes left in the cook time, and I think that that's going to be a little short. I think it's probably closer to maybe an hour and a half or something like that. It does all depend because that 257 temperature will make a big difference on when it gets done. So if that temperature rises up a little bit, it will get done sooner. And also, I did put the thermometer a little low, so that might read done before it's actually done. Now I'm going to go ahead and pop the lid off. The only downside to that is that it'll probably run the temperature up just a little bit. Oh, and that looks beautiful. And you can see the angle of the probe is a little lower than I want. And I might give it a try to reset that. Also, I don't know if you can see this, but on the back here is that slab of fat, and it is rendering up very nicely. That is going to be really yummy if it gets cooked really well done. For you, I'm going to be back in 1 second, but for me, that's probably going to be about an hour and a half. It's been really close to 2 hours, just slightly longer than I expected. I kind of got busy at work, and then I was like, oh, I'm a little worried, but I also know that we limited the amount of fuel that was in here. So I felt comfortable that that fuel would start to kick out right about an hour ago. So first thing let's do is check it out here. Now, I did take a screenshot, and I am trying to Gmail that over to my computer so I can put it on the screen right here of the Temps Spike app. And you can see that it's 181 internal. The top gauge says that it's 260, and this one says it's about 220. And I don't remember, I think it was 250 or 248 on the Temps Spike. So I've got these two instant read thermometers. I was able to move the probe a little bit. Put this one in first. And this one in second. So I'm hoping to get those readings on the second camera, and we've got 178 on the top one and 174 on the bottom one. Either one is lower than what the Temps Spike says. So we still have a ways to go there. I'm going to take one more reading right in here. Oh, and see, then that one's 179. So that kind of gives me a little bit more hope that maybe I just hit a bad spot there. Now you can see it's got a lot of color on it. I'm not worried about that at all, but if you're worried about that, there's two things that you could do. You could either wrap it a little bit sooner, which I'm not really going to do, or you could spritz it down with like an apple cider or just regular apple juice. Some people like to use apple cider vinegar. Another good option is a broth, like a vegetable broth or a chicken broth with barbecue sauce added to it. About 2 parts broth and 1 part barbecue sauce, and you can base that or spray it, and it adds a lot to your flavor. I'm going to go ahead and put this lid back on there, and then we're going to take a look inside. I expect most of it to be gone. And that is exactly what I expected to see. It's just about ashed out, and we got about 2 more hours to go here. So I'm going to get you a close-up of that. I'm going to pour out a few blocks of charcoal, and I'm just going to insert them in there. I just poured them on the ground, and I'll grab them with the tongs and just set them in there. I'll be right back. I've got it all loaded in there, and first I put in 18 or 16 briquettes in there, and then what I did was I gathered up the charcoal that was still burning, that was kind of around the edges there, into one pile, so it would make a nice hot starting pile. But I'm going to put this on top of it, and this will act just like a lighter, like it did in the beginning. By adding this on top of that hot charcoal, it'll kick the temperature up fast. That'll start to smolder a little bit, and then it's going to catch on fire, and we'll be right back on full cooking temperature. I'm going to put up a couple of images here while I put the door back on. It's going to smoke a little bit as that block ignites, and we'll put in a little bit of oxygen there if we need to get it to kick up a little bit faster. But I'll just watch it over the next few minutes, and I'll let you know how that turns out. We'll probably be back in about an hour for me and about 2-3 seconds for you. It's been about an hour and a half since last time we talked. So now I'm going to go ahead and pull the pork out. Now, the internal temperature of the pork is 190 degrees, and the temperature outside is the hottest day of the year, so I'm pretty much done. And I don't say that the pork is done, I'm saying that I am cooked, and I think that I need to get in the house into the air conditioning. And the best thing to do to make that happen is to get the pork out and slice it and see what we got. Normally, I would want to rest this at 192 currently, internal temperature. I think that I would want to bring this to a rest for about 30 minutes to an hour to let it carry over, cook, and completely break down. But I think we're going to be really close by what I've been seeing and feeling here. And look at that. Doesn't that look great? So I got my hot gloves here, and I'm going to put those on. And these are Weber gloves, and they are awesome. Now, I saw some generic ones that were a couple of dollars cheaper. For a couple of dollars, I just bought the Weber ones. This probe is going to be smoking hot, so you need hot gloves to pull it out. As soon as it comes to room temperature, or slightly more than room temperature, then you can clean it up. Now the grill mat will still stick slightly to the grate, but not too bad. Oh, that's perfect. Take that over here. Notice I'm using the back of the knife to kind of scrape underneath that. I caught it on just a little bit, but that's just a little snack there. And this is that piece of fat that was rendered out, and I'm going to go ahead and leave that on the grill here. It still has plenty of temperature, but it is starting to run out of fuel. Go ahead and take off these. I'll be right back. Now it is very, very hot, and typically I would rest that out and the temperature would actually even out and it would come down just a little bit. Surface is going to be hotter than the inside. Trying to cut it without tearing it up. This is my Victorinox, I think they call it a Japanese chef's knife. Okay, that is super, super soft. Look at that. And of course I have the side camera, but I'm going to bring that up here to the main camera so you can get a look at it. And I want you to be able to see all the juice, and I want you to be able to see that wonderful smoke ring. That's pretty impressive. Now the important part is, does it taste impressive? It's definitely very moist. It's just barely holding together. Boy, that's good. I'm going to take a cut off the side so I get all bark on that bite. That's just really good. And again, perfect moisture. It could be just a touch firmer, so maybe I could go for a little bit lower internal temperature, but that's a me thing. If you're going to pull it, you're actually going to want to go for about another 5 degrees higher. So this is a successful cook for the Masterbuilt charcoal bullet smoker. Now, the main thing that I did was I ran the charcoal snake method instead of running the full minion method, because there's no way to control the input of the air from the bottom. By putting in less fuel, I was able to manage the temperature better and have a better end result. From now on, that's going to be the primary focused way that I'm going to do this, is I'll manage the temperature by loading a smaller amount of fuel. Also, I'm going to see on one of my modification projects if I can find a way to seal that bottom up and prevent air from coming in, so that way we can manage it completely from the top. We'll just have a few little air holes in the bottom, and that top vent will control everything else. So we're done here. If you saw anything you like, there'll be affiliate links below. Even if you don't want to buy something, check the price on the smoker. That really helps the channel. So again, thanks for watching and have a great day.